You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap of One Piece chapters 1133 through 1135. That's right, 3 chapters for the price of one Rookie Pirate Radio episode as we are catching up this week. And Travis, can I just say new year, new format, apparently.
A new year, new format indeed. We're definitely giving a bonus gift to you, the listener, by getting to listen to us talk about even more One Piece all at once.
Yeah, the gift is that we put out an episode, I guess. So we'll get into that. As usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you've not yet read all the way up to and through One Piece 1135, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked in the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are available to read for free up to 3 weeks after their official release, or whenever you want, if you're subscribed to Shonen Jump, which we are and do recommend. Yeah, so Travis, we've been doing this show since 1071, I think was the first One Piece chapter we ever did. So it's been a couple years now. And we don't usually, we've never done 3 chapters in one. We've never missed that much time. But December was a bit of a rocky port, if you will.
Yeah, we had a bit of an incident that occurred off screen that we will not revisit and we'll only do in our own SBS, maybe in like 6 months if you write us a letter.
Unless we have like an extended flashback episode that's anime only and it's, it's an arc that has nothing to do with, yeah. Remember December 2024?
If we come up with the need to fill some time for some reason, then maybe I guess we could squeeze it in, but I don't know. Schedule's looking tight.
That's all to say. We had a few listeners be like, you know what this is? This is the most roundabout advertisement for the Discord yet, because this is just John and Travis trying to get people to miss Rookie Pirate Radio so much they had no choice but to join the Discord server so that they could hang out with us there. And maybe they're right. Maybe that is what we were doing intentionally. I don't know for sure. But if you do want to hang out with us in the Discord anyway, even if, once you're done being upset and you forgive us, and of course we apologize for our spy methods, but the Discord server is wonderful because you can find the One Piece spoilers channel where you can hang out with us, those of us who are caught up on the manga, and then we have other channels too. I'm forgetting what they are, Travis, and by forgetting I mean I'm hopelessly lazy.
Hopelessly lazy. Well, we have channels dedicated to everything that InBetweenDrafts.com covers. That's not just anime and manga, but also books, film, TV, video games. Sometimes we'll spin up special channels for things. And, of course, all of the other podcasts we put out as well, which you should definitely check out if you like this one. And you can chat with us. You can join the agenda to get us to actually put out a Jujutsu Kaisen episode. I feel like we're going to have a revolt in there soon, so make sure that you go plant your flag. And, of course, that's a good segue to the Pizza Wars channel, where you can plant your flag for either Domino's or Pizza Hut or something that actually tastes like pizza.
Yeah, speaking of, wars, violence, kind of a theme of these chapters, right? Strength in the midst of peace, that kind of thing. But yes, thank you, of course, all of you who are already on the Discord. We love you so much. And if you want to support the show, one other quick thing you can do is we've been getting some more 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you to everybody who's done that in the last year. It helps us out quite a bit. If you haven't done it yet, still super much appreciated. But we don't want to belabor it any longer because we got a lot. 3 chapters to get into, Travis. The format we're going to do for this to try to streamline things, and yes, obviously, our email, of course, you want to email us, rookiepiratradio@gmail.com. One more time, obviously, because Travis loves it. rookiepiratradio@gmail.com. Don't forget to tell your parents.
Perfect.
The 3 chapters we're talking about, we're just going to do a couple of shorter, ish recaps of the first 2, and then we're going to do a normal recap of 1135, because that is the latest. So if you are binging all of these at once, yes, we aren't going to be, going too much in detail on those other 2 chapters. We are going to focus a lot on 1135, I predict, but that's okay, I think, because, they came out a while ago. So without further ado, and also, Travis, can you help me out with the cover story for 1133 before we do the recap for 1133? What's going on here?
Sure can. We are continuing the Ogre Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage. This is Volume 20. We've been at this for a while, but we seem to have discovered at least a current thief behind some of the shenanigans going on in the land of Wano. Holden has defeated Speed and is holding Tama hostage and basically telling Yamato, hey, drop drop it. I'm gonna cut this kid. It's kind of a bring it all back around as Hold'em re-enters the story. And we've got a moment of tension for once in this cover story. I know a lot of people have complained about that.
Well, my only little caveat is I don't know if my thing is I don't think Hold'em defeated Speed. My thinking here is it's a sucker punch kind of situation.
Yeah,
right? I mean, it looks like Speed probably didn't, just got hit and, her guard was down, that kind of thing. That'll come into play in another.
Yes. Speaking of sucker punches, we'll be revisiting that concept soon.
Yes, exactly. But okay, on to the chapter itself. Again, this will be a shorter recap, but so we start off with a bit of a flashback. So, we're seeing like after O'Hara's destruction, how the world was labeling Robin as a demon, pinning all the blame on just this 8-year-old girl and turning her into a hunted fugitive. And despite almost giving up, almost getting to that point, Robin still kept going, getting a lot of Enies Lobby sort of vibes here. We see that what keeps her going really are her memories of her mother, but then also Saul. So that's when, of course, we fast forward to the present and we see the Straw Hats, finally kind of like they've all sort of arrived together in Elbaf. They're all kind of marveling at what's going on. Elbaf itself, they're having the welcome to the new island moment. We have a little bit of a reconnection with Hajrudin and his crew. So there's a nice little, the Straw Hat Grand Fleet lives on. But the real emotional punch, of course, is that Robin finally reunites with Saul. The whole prank thing was just that. It was just a prank of Saul trying to be like, oh yeah, like when they first met and everything. We've learned how Saul survived O'Hara, and kind of a weird twist, but not even a twist, but just a classic Oda sort of thing. And yeah, this reunion, I mean, it was super heartfelt, lots of tears and hugs, and Saul telling Robin she's made it. It's definitely One Piece at its most emotional, Even the whole crew is kind of feeling it. The readers are feeling it. Luffy's grinning like a proud captain. It's just a really nice chapter of the manga. If it had ended 2024, I think it would have been a very fitting ending. Yeah, I thought that Oda really nailed it with the emotion of it. I know some people were complaining like, is that it? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, Robin earned this. Like, stop. We don't have to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about the discourse around fake out deaths and everything like that. But I think it's really difficult to argue that there's, especially with that added flashback, which is always nice to have because it was new content. But also it's just helpful to have a reminder because Enies Lobby was so long ago in publication. It's just good to have a reminder to ground us in just how very few times the story has allowed us someone's flashback to conclude like this, especially for a main character.
Couldn't agree more. And you know what I just noticed too? This is funny. We're doing 3 chapters. One ends in 3, one ends in 4, one ends in 5. So literally 2023, 2024, and the year 2025 is where we fit. Too weird. Yeah, not quite.
Is it fate?
I don't know. Okay, so then on to chapter 1134. And I forgot to say that the name of chapter 1133 is Nice Things. And then the name of chapter 1134 is, what was it again? I had it just here.
It's the Owl Library.
Yes. The Owl Library. So this chapter also has some emotion to it. A lot of lore and world building too. So Luffy thanks Saul for helping Robin. There's like a kind of goofy Yakuza vibe thing going on with Luffy that I enjoyed. Robin calls the Straw Hats her true friends. She leaving most of the crew sobbing again, except for I think Zoro and Jinbei are the only ones who aren't crying. Saul apologizes for the prank from earlier. He asks Luffy to keep protecting Robin. Obviously, Luffy happily agrees to that. And then meanwhile, Lilith actually drops a pretty huge bombshell, or a briefcase rather. She's carrying a perfect Vegapunk clone in a box. This is the fandom complaint that I'm okay with. But it ties to his secret visit to Elbaf years ago that was mentioned during the Egghead arc. And as the crew explores Elbaf a bit more, we learn that the Giants have actually become peaceful traders thanks to the influence of King Harold, although Loki's betrayal has left the country without a ruler for quite some time now. So this has fueled a lot of theories, by the way, that King Harold, we'll get into it, but that King Harold actually was a bad dude who betrayed the island with the world government, but we'll get into that. Pretty persistent theory at the moment. Robin and Saul have this very touching moment at the Owl Library where Robin sees the books that Saul saved from O'Hara. It brings her to tears, and The chapter ends on a dark note, though, as Loki is kind of plotting in the shadows with a character named Mosa, I think it was. And then we also see two hooded figures arrive in the one of the castle's areas on like a summoning circle. And yeah, it looks like these are two holy knights. One of them appears to be the not Shanks, the man who looks like Shanks that we probably the person we saw during the Reverie arc who confronted the Gorosei. And for a long time, people have speculated that this is maybe Shanks' evil twin and that Oda is setting the stage for something big with this sort of like other Figurling Garling, or not Figurling Garling, but Figurling whoever that this might be. I don't think it's Shanks' Travis. Can I just say it?
We've collectively chosen, I like Figurlin Shiv is a good name.
I think Brandline Review called him Figurling Frank.
Yeah, Frank's good too.
I don't think he's Shanks' brother. I don't think he's his brother. I don't think they're related. You know what I think?
Well, we'll have to dig into that. I want to stop you before we open up can of worms, though. First off, Shaggy is the translated name for Loki's contact on the Den Mushi, which normally takes the form of its collar, but this is a cold-resistant, voice-activated Den Mushi, so it looks like it's a woolly Den Mushi, but that might not tell us anything about who he's talking to, which is a very clever point. And then just before we jump over to the chapter, do you want to talk about the color spread? Yeah.
So we have the color spread at the very beginning. I forgot to tee up for that. Nice little send off to the voice actor for Frankie. Yeah.
Kazuki Yao has retired from the role, which is kind of amazing to think about, not just because this will probably not be the last one to do so, but that Frankie as a character was created visually for this voice actor. So it's a very heartfelt moment. Of course, Oda had to sign off on it. I think it's great. My favorite part of it, though, is that if you look closely, Luffy's like about to jump off of Frankie's head. And so Nami just very casually has her arm wrapped around his other leg so he doesn't go falling into the sea. Very just good detail as always from Oda there.
Yeah. And Rob even has the new bangs. So we have that kind of maintained.
I think the bangs are here to stay. I think they're sticking around.
Yeah. Oda finally listened to our hate mail, I suppose. But all right, let's get into 1135 then. This one's called Friends Cups. And so we'll do a more detailed recap of that. But first, Travis, what do we got for this cover story going on here?
Well, as we foreshadowed earlier, there was at least one sucker punch that happened because we are continuing Yamato's Golden Harvest surrogate pilgrimage with Tama cold cocking Hold'em in the face with a ninja kick, showing off her training with Shinobu and catching him completely off guard, freeing herself and not needing help from anyone else, which is nice, even though this is one of those things that sends power scaling fans of the series into absolute tiffs of insanity.
Oh yeah, let me you know what? Hey, let me do my impersonation, in fact, of a One Piece Redditor on the Pirate Folk subreddit. Here we go. This is just Oda doing this again, where, you just don't, like, all of a sudden she can beat a headliner. Does that mean she can beat Basil Hawkins? Oda is, like, not doing it. Like, Oda's lost the sauce. Like, nah, dude, she just sucker punched him. She didn't defeat the dude. Chill. He's not expecting her to kick him.
He's literally got the surprised eyes, like, bulging out of his skull, like, oh, what's happened here?
Yes, and also, these are gag characters. Hold'em is a joke character. Are you really taking him so seriously? This is a cover story, too.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense for Tama to, after everything that's happened, be able to free herself from Hold'em instead of needing Luffy to do it, like at the beginning of Wano. Mm-hmm. I think this is one of those things.
It's the theme of the chapter.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's one of those things. Yeah, exactly. Yet again, this is a chapter that properly introduces us to another like future generation character, right? Another child that Luffy is now inspiring. But like, I think people would have less problems with this. And you're right, they're just nerds. But the fact that One Piece's time scale makes about as much sense as nothing does hurt moments like this. Because what we're saying here is that this is more or less, a month at most since they've left, since Tom has been doing this training. I think that does skew people's perception on what's even possible. Again, this whole thing is not a big deal, not worth even like getting into the weeds about. But I do think if more time was allowed to pass in the story, I feel like these would be a lot more easier to ingest for everybody.
This is my thing. Let's not forget that these characters also work off of video game logic. Think of Otama.
Absolutely.
Like, she got a huge EXP boost after, like, think Pokemon when you have like the one character in your party who like almost fainted all the way down to 1 HP, like during a battle with the Elite Four. Okay. And yeah,
Just,
I
like,
mean, she went
clenched
through
it.
so much during that arc. Like, I
Yeah.
think even before this like training that she's done, I think that, yeah, she's a pretty resilient character in her own right. Scrapping by her whole life. It's not like she's some kind of like pampered, kind of character her whole life. No, like she was surviving those streets. Got it? So yeah, we
Yeah,
defend Tom
exactly.
up in here.
Yeah, it's silly to have this kind of reaction. I do think it's funny that even now, Tama has been more active in this cover story than Yamato has, though.
That is true.
It's
Yeah.
very fun. Like
that
that.
makes sense. I mean, we love our little, beast tamer. Okay, so let's get into 1135. This will be a more legit kind of recap. I'll do my best to be quick about it since we're already going. Okay, so first up, where do we start actually? Oh, yeah, okay. So we start at the Owl Library. Chopper and Bonnie are attempting to read one of the giant-sized books. Saul introduces them to Biblo. We love Biblo. He's the owl responsible for gigantifying any book that enters his domain thanks to the power of the Iku Iku no Mi. Also, as the official translator puts it, grow, devil fruit. Lilith deduces this ability, while Chopper hopes to find some medical books, only to learn that they are giant-sized, so that makes the studies a bit of a workout. Meanwhile, Luffy's antics on the swings sends him, Usopp, and two giant children soaring, leading to Nami reprimanding him for scaring the kids. The children try to seek some comfort from Gerd, and then Sanji kind of fumes over a child's cheeky glance, kind of a callback to Momo, and it's like, is every like brat do this kind of thing? Luffy expresses his disappointment in how Elbaf is so peaceful. It's more peaceful than he expected. But then Usopp is kind of like, oh yeah, I get it, but like, let's chill out. Like, it's what's wrong with a little bit of peace? Give peace a chance. But then the young giant we have met before, Colin, challenges Luffy, tries to do a little bit of his own sucker punch sneak attack. But the wooden sword he tries to hit Luffy with breaks upon impact, and impressed by Colin's spirit, his gusto, Luffy responds with his own kind of, gear 3, I think it was. Like, he just kind of like tries to go for it there. And then it freaks out a bunch of the giant kids. And Ripley actually, we find out, is Colin's mother as well as teacher. Scolds him for attacking Luffy, but praises his initiative, revealing also that Colin's father actually is, or I think Colin reveals that his father was a human and a former pirate. So after this, the crew actually splits up. So Luffy's group returns to the Owl Library, where Robin decides to stay longer to converse with Saul during the feast. Lilith and Bonnie head off to try to obtain resident permits. Apparently, maybe, we'll talk about it. And Frankie chooses to study the treasure tree atom. Gerd provides some new Elbaf-style clothing to Robin, Frankie, Brooke, and Jinbei before they part ways. And the rest of the Straw Hats are going to go to the castle at this point. And we actually or not the castle, the Western Village. But then we do go to the castle, Arist Castle, near the Western Village, and we see that the two mysterious hooded figures from before, we don't know where they spawned. It looked like they were near some ruins or something, but it looks like they have gone to this castle next. And they confront a couple of giant guards, and they're demanding to know where Loki is. So I have a feeling, Travis, if we had talked about this chapter, we probably would have assumed that they were here to get, Luffy, right? Of like, oh yeah, I think we even mentioned that there probably are going to be some shenanigans. People are going to be hunting the Straw Hats because they know they went to Elbaf, but no, they're actually after Prince Loki. And one of the guards is like, yeah, get out of here, piss off. One of the Holy Knights, we think they're a Holy Knight, who has bandages on them, uses some kind of like mysterious attack. It's hard to tell what's going on, but it looks like they're using bandages to restrain the guard and basically one-shots them, and then reiterates that, they're not asking questions. Like, they're here to get some answers. So we'll probably see what happens with that very shortly in the next chapter, most likely. So we go to the Western Village, and the Straw Hats are receiving a pretty huge and warm welcome. The Giants toast to their victories over Kaido and Big Mom. Luffy actually recognizes Stanson, who recalls their meeting at the Human Auctioning House during the Sabati Archipelago arc, and expresses gratitude for how Luffy freed him. And then the elder Ja Rule, the world's oldest giant at 408 years old, arrives at the feast riding his Var, and Luffy notices a sword lodged in his head, and he nonchalantly explains that his helmet saved his life, even though Luffy's it went through your head. We'll see how that gag continues to be funny. But yeah, that is how we end the chapter. It looks like these two figures who are likely Holy Knights, who apparently might have some kind of Gorosei related adjacent abilities, are going to be heading right to the Straw Hats, because I think after Aris Castle, they'd have to go to the Western Village to get to the Forest of Doom or whatever it was called, where Loki is. And so, yeah, big stuff brewing. Travis Hymas, how are we feeling? We're starting the new year off with finally a little bit of like a, oh yeah, here's some conflict that might happen. And we're going to get some more lore around the sort of the Holy Dragon, Celestial Dragon, Holy Knights / Celestial Dragon, Five Elder power type. Because we've seen it in Egghead. Now we're going to see it with two new characters.
Yeah, I feel like I should let you get back on your conspiracy theory about Figurlin Shiv here, since I did have you pause. You don't think he's a twin?
Too easy. Here's what I think happened. I think we're going to get some God Island stuff in this chapter, I think. And I think that something happened to the real Shanks when he was Figurland, what have you, and he was in the treasure chest or whatever, right? We know, of course, that there were Holy Knights or like Holy Knights to be, including Figurland Garling, in this area. And I think that after this heir, this kind of very important character who would become Shanks, was lost to pirates, who's around during this time, Travis Hymas? That's right, Vegapunk. And what did we just get a whole thing about with Vegapunk? Clones. I think he's a clone. I think they cloned the son who was taken away. And I don't think he's a sibling. I think he's a legit Shanks clone of the real, or the other way around, that the treasure chest Shanks is the actual clone. Either way, the big reason is the swords are the same. Their faces are the same. Like to the point where like they have the same facial. There are too many similarities to which I think that like if they were siblings, the fact even if they were twins, they wouldn't have the same facial hair. And I get that it could be a whole thing to like conceal Shanks, but I think it takes away what's interesting about Shanks if you give him an evil twin. I think if you give him an evil clone, however, then you make it part of the story of like they care so less about this like corrupted, this kid who's been corrupted by pirates, no redemption. And I think when we one day get like the Shanks backstory, I think there is going to be like when Shanks confronted his family and how he got Griffin. I think there's going to be a lot of explanation of how that stuff happened that is going to be frankly like kind of messed up. And so that's the sword I'm sticking into the ground.
Okay. So how long ago was God Valley?
50 years. Right?
Wasn't it 38? Wasn't it 38?
Was it 38? Okay, maybe.
Well, now I have to double check that because that's important. That's important. Let's see. Yeah,
I mean,
38
it makes sense
years.
It would be however old Shanks is.
Yeah, 38 years.
Okay.
Was God Valley. Stussy was created at Mads 36 years ago, and she's the first successful clone that Mads made.
This is why the clone thing still makes sense, though, because he could have been cloned after the fact.
That's what I'm saying. Is we have a lineup here, right? We have these things, kind of.
I'm not saying the clone would have started as a baby. We don't know that that's the case. I think that Vegapunk cloned him like sometime, like more when Shanks was like a little bit older, maybe during Roger's time.
What I'm saying is that this might not be a Vegapunk thing. This may be a Jay Garcia Saturn thing.
But yeah, he doesn't have that technology though. Or you think it could be like some evil occultist thing?
Could be, or it could. I mean, if we want to go into the cloning thing, it's clear that there is at least some advanced technology that existed prior to Vegapunk's discovery of it. So even just the understanding that cloning is possible could be something that comes from that period of time, or it could be something that Vegapunk himself has discovered. Debatable. Nonetheless, if he's not a twin, the resemblance either has to be familiar, like they could just be family members. It is possible that just he's younger than Shanks. They had another kid after after Shanks was lost in the incident, and so he's a younger brother. I think that's feasible. I don't want to shoot down the clone theory, but I do think that this is more of a this is probably not something that Vegapunk just did kind of thing. I think that this is more of a project situation if it is the cloning thing. The only thing that I can really say about him specifically is I think at this point we have to at least entertain the idea that a few things. Number one, there are 3 men we're talking about here. There's not 2 men we're talking about here. They're like evil Shanks is probably Dunzo, right? Like Oda's being very coy. We can't see how many arms this guy has, or we can't see the scar. So but it's probably not Shanks, right? And then we have Fingerland Garling, and then we have the man himself, Shanks. And it's pretty clear that these are 3 different people occupying, time. So when we have things years and years ago where Whitebeard says, I look at you and my scar aches, that's probably Garling from God Valley, right? That seems pretty, I think we can lock that in. When we see Shanks talking to the Gorosei at the Reverie, that's probably not Shanks at this point. That's probably Shiv or whatever we've decided to call him. That makes more sense, and that's probably the first time we've actually seen him. His pose is identical. Not to say that Oda didn't redraw it. I don't want him to take offense to that, but, it's the same pose so that we don't immediately clock that it's not Shanks. Like we're supposed to be questioning this. But it does, I do think that they're 3 people. I don't think this is a situation where, like, the 2 Shankses, whatever they are, like, collaborating. Like, this is not the solution to, like, how Shanks got to Marineford as quickly as he did, for example. I don't think that it's necessarily the answer of everything that he's here, whether it's cloning or anything else. But I do think that this is a very clever way to give us Luffy meets Shanks without ever having to actually do Luffy meets Shanks, and then Blackbeard could go kill him or something.
So all that said, because I do want to bring up, because this is related to Shanks, the whole thing of how the giants are all peaceful now, right? They haven't had a ruler in 6 years, and there's this feeling of complacency, right? Of how Hajruden is like, Hajruden's like the last generation where they were really trained up and everything. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if there's going to be some explanation of like, they've been complacent, they haven't had a king, maybe because Shanks has kind of been protecting Elbaf for some time. And it feels like, at least to them, like they don't really need a king right now, or they can't agree on it. Maybe we'll get an explanation for what the issue is. Hajruden doesn't want to do it. Loki is like low-key evil, apparently. But there's been a lot of chatter. I know people have likened this to Loki to being like a Jaime Lannister by way of Game of Thrones type of villain, in the sense that he's misunderstood, literally killed a king, but for the right reasons. And that could explain, well, how in the world is there a summoning circle in Elbaf? How is that even possible? It has to be something that would absolutely, like, what is causing this now, I guess. And I've seen a lot of speculation about this. I think it was Grand Line Review who brought this up of like, maybe they could have done this for a while, and King Harold, because it's teased here that he opened up kind of trade with the world government. They've notoriously been more closed off, which is a big reason why they probably don't know much about the Void Century even. So all that to say, I think that if King Harold had been like cozying up to the world government and was on the brink of selling them out, or maybe even giving them the legendary devil fruit, I think that's where it comes down to things, because I think that I think that's what these 2 are after. I think some people have posited that must be why they're here, because now that Luffy has shown the Sun God fruit and has like kind of just made a mockery of the Gorosei by standing up to Saturn, and was able to like hold them off, and was able to inspire, the giants, and was able to inspire another person to show the Nika fruit. I think the Gorosei are desperate, and I think they're looking for another legendary devil fruit that might be related to this. And that's where Loki's going to kind of come in, because he has this fruit apparently, and that's why they want to hunt him down now of all times, and why that's the priority versus like, all right, they probably know that they're not going to be able to just stop Luffy like this. Like if they come after Luffy, like, so what? Like all the Straw Hat Pirates, like they're spread, the world government spread too thin to try something like that. But Loki is imprisoned. They can get that fruit, and they can probably find a way to feed it to somebody that they wanted. Who they would give the fruit to, I don't actually even know, because the sense that we're getting is that the Holy Knights they have their own thing going on, where like the Celestial Dragons kind of have a taboo against devil fruits because they're, gods and holy and all that stuff. So they have these special evil Gorosei powers apparently that are like yokai related. So yeah, that's a roundabout way of saying I think that's where this conflict is going to head next. And I think that's the kind of thing that Luffy probably has more context on via his conversation with Loki. And Loki kind of puts on this villain front, but ultimately I think he's going to be pretty sympathetic.
Yeah, I think we floated before the idea that Loki is probably not just like a bald-faced bad guy, right? Like doing
Yes.
the MCU thing where, eventually it turns out he's doing another bit. I don't know that I'm completely married to the idea that like he killed his father because he discovered something and he's trying to like protect Elbaf, mostly because he's trying to get out. I think if this was something where he was doing like the big martyr thing, he would not be trying to break free of that, if that makes sense. So I want to say that that's not necessarily compelling for me, but the idea that like the summoning circles are like waypoints that you can set is kind of an interesting idea, because it does open up the idea that they necessarily can't teleport anywhere they want to, which answers that question of why don't they just do that all the time. But I don't know. I feel like there's still like a twist that we're missing, I guess is where I'm stuck.
Yeah. We're putting pieces together, but we're missing a few more.
Yeah, there's one more twist that I think we're sitting on, and that probably is what was the king's agenda, because, we have woke Elbaf now. Elbaf is truly gone woke. It
Giants
no longer does
are marrying
violence,
humans.
Right? Giants are marrying humans. We'll talk
What's
about
next?
that, because boy, am I confused about how biology works now. Good thing we have a biology teacher around.
And also, good thing we have a fruit that maybe can make people bigger. Maybe inorganic things. It permanently makes it bigger. Maybe inorganic maybe organic things like people can only be temporarily bigger. Just saying, because that could set the stage for Straw Hat Giants.
I mean, maybe we do kaiju fights for this one. Maybe
let's do it.
I could get behind that, but
I'm not busy
with the king. His this agenda of like modernizing Elbaf, or at least seeking a more like peaceful resolution to things, is kind of curious to me, at least for a couple of reasons. The first is, with all the talk of like war and combat and all of this, all of our experiences with giants have been more or less positive, right? Like Dory and Brogy have like their hangups, and they're very, combat oriented and honor oriented and everything, but that's not the story's never framed that as bad, right? We had Saul call Elbaf like, a place of what did he call them? Like savages or something, in back in Robin's flashback, but there's no context added to that. And then when he does go to Elbaf, they do turn around and he goes and he gets the books and everything, and they have this library, and the library's clearly been here for some time. It has to have been. It's the only way that makes sense. So what is actually wrong with Elbaf culture, outside of being, a little bit about doing war? They don't seem to be doing expansionism. There doesn't seem to be any villages that we know of yet that like aren't following the rule of the king or anything like that. Everybody seems to be kind of on the same page. And it's not like there's even a cultural conflict between somebody like Dory and Brogy and Harujin and everything and these younger kids. They don't seem to have any kind of like disrespect for their teachers, for example, who come from that previous way of thinking, right? Like they don't talk back to Ripley. They don't really like, they have more to say about Colin, who, is kind of stuck in their old ways too. So it's really interesting. He's a bit of a stinker, but like
a Vicky the Viking, if you will.
So the interesting thing about that is that his characterization is basically the reverse of Vicky the Viking. Visually, nearly identical, but personality-wise, Vicky the Viking represents basically what New Elbaf is. Being clever rather than just aggressive, and thoughtful more than just using force. And Colin is kind of not that, right? He wants to go on a pirate adventure and be cool and be inspired by like Luffy and Shanks. So like again, it's kind of like we have these dueling ideologies, but they're not super incompatible, at least from what we've seen this story present. And I assume that the king situation is going to be where we finally start to like interrogate that.
Yeah.
But I don't see where we go from here right now. Again, I feel like there's just a twist missing, and I think we actually need Elbaf's real history to understand that, which probably does bring us back to Nika.
Yeah, we're probably going to get some like the difference between Goku and Vegeta in this kind of thing, where like Luffy is going to be the kind of Goku who sort of looks down on the sort of passive, idea of peace versus strength through peace or peace through strength, which is that there's nothing wrong with like, yeah, people are happy, they have everything they want to eat and all that stuff. It's not that Luffy revels in violence. I think what he revels in is strength and having the strength to earn and win your freedom and to not be a crybaby, but when you want something to go for it, and to protect people and to be, it's the kind of Goku thing of like the thrill of the fight. It's it's not about whether you win or lose. If you're the strongest or the weakest, it's more about like having the courage to become stronger and that sort of thing. And I think that's why he looks up, or he's not looking down on Colin, because like, yeah, he has some backbone. He knows that he's not going to be able to beat Luffy, but he wants something and he's going for it rather than just kind of like goofing off and that's it. And so I think that's the sort of philosophy that Elbaf has kind of probably gotten away from because of their isolationism, because they don't have any wars to fight. They're kind of like stuck in their ways at the moment. And the giants who do kind of still have that attitude of like, all right, we're not going to make war with others. We'll make war with each other. Dory and Burger will have a 100-year battle to see who's the strongest. I think that's kind of the thing that is going to resonate, because now the next generation needs some kind of inspiration. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for this arc to get into that. I know people have been talking about, by the way, like how long is this arc going to be? I think that 2025 is going to be full Elbaf for sure. And I think maybe 2026 we'll start to maybe see like it could. This feels like a 2-year arc, maybe 3 to me.
We could be here for a while.
I don't know.
Let's just get ahead of it. How many?
Let's talk about overstaying people's welcomes, though, because we've already been warned about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to put down roots in a place where you shouldn't overstay your welcome, Travis Hymas?
Well, you've seen Ripley, and I think you've seen Sanji's reaction there to discovering that Colin's father is a human. He seems to have seen some sort of light of inspiration. Can't wait to see that get animated. I mean, look at her, man. Come on. But it does beg the question of who in the heck, like, I think we all know who it must be, in that it's the guy with the hat.
There's 2 top candidates.
Well, it's the guy with the hat, right? Whoever that guy is, it's that
silhouette
guy, right?
Yeah, right. And I think like the consensus right now is that it's either Golden Lion Shiki or Scott Bergabon. And if it's not one of them, most people have it in their heads that it's going to be either a member of the Roger Pirates or a member of the Rocks Pirates. It's tricky though. So there have been some folks who've said though that, well, Ripley, based on what we know about her so far, she's not that old. She might be in between 80 to 100 because she's around Hiruden's generation, right?
Hiruden's generation, yeah.
So, and she says that the person who she's like not married to, her like common law husband, is much younger than her. That said, the official translation, I'll double check it because I think it's a little bit less clear about that, right? Where it's kind of
he's a younger man.
He's a younger man.
She's messing with Sanji, is what she's doing. Is like there's a little heart added to it and everything, like
right,
which is great. He deserves it, but
it doesn't
help us.
She says that he keeps sulking that he's the only one who ages. So that's more the thing. So technically, Scott Gabon would probably be in his 70s, so he would be younger, but not a huge age gap. And it's more about the fact that like, yeah, one of them's getting older, the other, So that could make sense. That could fit with Scott Gabon. Shiki's a different story because I think Shiki would be like pretty similar. Like I think Shiki is around 80, right? I'll double check that.
Yeah, something like that. And like, I still don't know how I feel about Shiki in general being, well, he's canon, but here and like active in the story, I don't know how I feel about that. Still about trying to like square that circle. It feels way too messy to be worth doing.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know. I think that's, I like so if I had to pick somebody who I would prefer, I think Shiki, honestly, I think would be a more fun character to have in the mix, to have him in the canon officially. And I think that the profile of the silhouette, like it seems to match better. The hat hiding the steering wheel, all that stuff. With Gabon, it still makes a ton of sense, because it's Gabon. We need some kind of checkpoint of like where's our Roger Pirate at this part of the Grand Line, this part of the New World. We haven't seen one yet, so that would make sense, I guess. But I don't know, something about it being Shiki, it makes me laugh. I feel like it fits, but I don't know. I don't want to say that it has to be him.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like that's as far as I've gotten is that we have the silhouette on the hat with the hat and everything. That seems to be the only realistic candidate because Colin's father hasn't left. We know that. There's the basket has something for him as well. So he's on the island. We only have that, really that only other candidate. But it doesn't necessarily mean that like it has to be a Roger Pirate or it has to be from that generation. There is technically a generation in between like Roger's era and the current era, right? We have not only, the people like Cavendish who came in like a year before the worst generation reached Sabaody, but technically your Buggies and Shankses are their own generation, right? Like we do have a period of time there where
the lost generation, the silent generation.
Yeah, like a silent generation, basically, that technically exists in this space, but hasn't been super explored because half of them have had their teeth kicked in by Luffy. So it's one of those things where, is this somebody else from the Rocks crew? Like somebody else younger? Is this, it's really hard to pin down. Like, are we going to get Douglas Bullet in canon? Is that like, technically that's as viable as Shiki right now if we're guessing Roger Pirates and Rocks Pirates, but
Silverax.
It's still yeah, it could be Silverax. I doubt it's Wang Shi, but it could be like think of a slightly older pirate that we've heard of at all and that technically fits the bill, right? So I'm almost expecting it to be someone we've never heard of because that's almost the funniest outcome at this point, and that's Oda's favorite
Usually
thing to do.
How it goes.
Yeah, just do the funniest thing possible.
Well, we may find out soon. We may get, it might be a couple chapters though. Who knows? I have a feeling that we might have a big thing with the Holy Knights trying to get to Loki, and then maybe this character shows up and kind of foils them or something. Who knows? But okay, so there is the panel that ended an agenda, as some claim. That's the rumor. Anyway, look, I get it. There's the panel where Lilith is like, don't worry about me. I've got to go ask her permission to put down roots here. And then Bonnie says, me too. In the context of, she's going to go with Lilith, right? You could look at this a few ways, that she's going to go with Lilith and that she might be looking for a way for Kuma to live here peacefully. That doesn't mean that she's going to be staying here, Travis. That doesn't mean that she's going to be staying here. It doesn't mean that she's a child. She doesn't get to make these decisions. And besides, we got to put a pin on that now because it's going to be relevant later. Come on. Her staying on Elbaf? Come on. No. I don't see it. No.
So, okay. So I will entertain the impending doom that is being set up here, right? We got the big emotional catharsis, which we haven't really talked about with Robin and Saul, but I think it is worth stressing that we do not get many of these just whole emotional victories. And while it has been a tearjerker and everything, it's really been too easy, hasn't it? I think we've been saying this for a while. Like, even getting to Elbaf felt kind of like a breeze once we actually got off of Egghead.
Mm-hmm.
So the longer this goes, where we're in a place where the Straw Hats are welcomed and they're heroes, and there doesn't really seem to be an intrinsic conflict and an old character that we know is hanging out here, and we may get to see a new Roger Pirate or something, right? Something bad is about to happen, and I don't think it's bad in the normal there's a bad guy subjugating the land or a pirate causing problems or even just these Holy Knights show up to start a fight. I think something actually really bad is going to happen. In large part because it didn't happen on Egghead and we were kind of expecting it to happen on Egghead. There does have to be a moment where we get lower, right? Like things have to get serious. We have the threats of like oceans rising and everything and the stuff that might happen later on towards the end of the story. But right now, the Straw Hats are riding pretty high, you know?
Yeah.
They're on top of the world. We've technically achieved one of the crew members' dreams. You know? We're that's kind of wild to think about. Two, if you consider the fact that Robin now finally has book access to the Library of Ohara. I mean, that's huge. But that also means this would be a great place to burn down.
Time
you know
skip?
what I mean? Not necessarily time skip, but just
I'm not talking about like the 2-year time skip, but like a couple months.
Maybe. I know we've entertained time moving differently here. I think that's a cool idea. I complain about the time scale of One Piece all the time. Slowing that down would help. But I mean, like, gee, it sure would be a shame if this library that's in a tree, like, catches fire, wouldn't it? That'd be a shame. It'd be would suck if there was somebody like really proficient with swords that could, cut through that clone box that just absolutely can't be opened until a whole lab gets set up. You know what I mean? Like, it sure would be a shame if these Holy Knights found out that there was a Vegapunk satellite that got away. I wonder if people would have a take on that. Like there's a bunch of little Jenga bricks narratively that we're building up here that I feel like Oda is just waiting until the opportune moment to pull out the load bearing, like something bad is about to happen. And whatever these plans are, I do think that they're not going to happen the way that they are expected to right now. That having been said, I do think that as things stand right now, it doesn't look like Bonnie has an interest in joining the crew or even really going further on her adventure. It really does seem like having the potential of getting Kuma back is, kind of a tie-off to her story, or at least that's how Oda is framing it. So something really is going to have to change to propel that forward.
Like if Kuma
I don't know
dies?
what that is. Yeah, if there isn't that anymore, if that potential's lost somehow, that would probably do it.
Yeah, like if there is this whole thing where maybe we do have a revelation that time moves slower here, and so we get a time skip that it's only maybe a few days in the real world while it's a few months on this island, and that would explain a few things of like, the 6 years that low-key, apparently it's been 6 years or whatever, but then also, what was I going to say? Oh, just the idea that, for them to have some time on this island to kind of like train up a little bit, for Frankie to study the tree, Robin to have some real time with, getting back into the library more than just like a couple hours. The Straw Hats all have something to do here. Chopper can level up with his medical books. Nami can learn about the weird climate. Usopp can have his kind of brave warrior of the sea kind of moment. Like we would have time to breathe here. And then you would also have Bonnie and Kuma spending some real time together. And then as the lab is getting set up and all this stuff, and we could get a couple chapters just montaging some of this. And Luffy potentially like learning how to master his devil fruit because he's in the place where he can do that. And then ultimately finding out why you shouldn't overstay your welcome in Elbaf. Maybe there's a reason with a downside, a bad effect, an after effect to being here for too long that could be explained. Or, that you feel like you never want to leave. It's going to stop your adventure because then Elbaf is just so big. There's so much to explore. But, finally you have to kind of go home and leave. So I don't know. I could see that. I could see a few different possibilities. I like that idea though. I like getting a nice little breather. It would give Oda a chance to kind of reset the table a little bit.
Yeah, it's again, like all of this is supposed to happen very, very quickly, and it does feel a little hectic quite a bit when you actually sit down and think about how time passes in the series. And most of the time, I pretty much actively just block it out of my mind. I just don't engage with it very often. And that would help, I think, letting the world kind of go to crap further and then kind of spit out into the middle of that. And Oda's Jump Festa message does seem to indicate that we will check in outside of Elbaf, potentially very soon, kind of Egghead style, which will be nice. It really does feel like we're over and done with Decks of the World and stuff. But in any case, if there is a situation where like staying put is going to happen, I don't think it's going to be by choice, because that's just not a Luffy decision. Let's be honest. Like if it turns out like they're like, we have to leave now or we're not going to be able to leave for like X amount of time, Luffy's going to choose, okay, we got to go now then, because I got to go see the next cool thing. He's too impatient.
Yeah, but I could see it. I mean, I could see like similar to the Saiyan saga, if these like two holy knights just kind of like wreck them, and the only reason they don't lose is because the Scopper Gabon character saves them, and Luffy's like humbled, you know, kind of in the same way he was after Marineford, of like, oh, I need to learn how to unlock, how to really like deal with this power, because if I don't, then I'm not going to be able to progress any farther. I could see that as a motivating factor. There's another thing too. We don't really have time to go through all the comments, but there was a comment from Cypher J I wanted to bring up, where they brought up that with Bilbo's ability, or Biblo, that they could use it potentially on ships, like not just the Sunny, but like ships in general, like with the Noah, which means that you could essentially save people by creating enough ships that would carry people above water. And so, and then there's also the fact that this island is so high that people would have some kind of sanctuary. And if that was the thing, like if the Straw Hats finally find out what's going on in the rest of the world with, you know, the news of the world and all that stuff, that would also be another motivating factor of like, oh, we're on like a countdown. We need, on this island though, we have a means essentially of creating a bunch of ships with Frankie's help that could save people. I don't know. I mean, this
is one of those things that, again, I feel like has been hovering over the story for a long time, and we're eventually going to have to deal with. How does Luffy save the world exactly? Like, we understand that, like, at this point, we're kind of like lining the dots up to, like, you know, do things like overthrow the world government, bring the dawn of the world. But we have to do that without at any point Luffy feeling obligated to do so, right? Because he's not going to do that.
He's going to train if somebody's like, and Luffy, you're the one who's going to have to punch these characters. Oh, the only way to do that is you have to learn this. Because it's like with Rio, he had to have a training arc for Rio.
Right. But he was all like, he had his motivations to do that though, that took the form of not, I am a hero, I'm here to save this country.
Right. Exactly.
I want to take down Kaido to further my agenda, and then, oh, we're here now, and here's this one kid who's not eating, and I don't like that because I like this kid. This kid's nice. You know, like again, it's that reminder that like Luffy operates. You know, Oda reinforced this recently in that Netflix interview as well, that like Luffy is kind of this just ultimate child. There has to be an element of personal satisfaction. You mentioned it yourself. Luffy has no problems stepping up and helping people, provided that they are willing to help themselves, that they're not going to become dependent or anything on him. His view of strength has a lot more to do with a motivation and intent, I think, than it does with actual power. But that does kind of dispense him into being someone who's not going to be like, well, we need to rally the troops and do like the Commander Shepard thing of taking the fight back to whatever, and kind of being like this war hero or leader or anything. Like, there are other characters who I feel are going to fill those roles. I think that's why Oda just could not commit to killing Vegapunk at this point in any way, shape, or form. Good Lord. Because that's something that like a Vegapunk needs to be on hand for, even more than like a Frankie or anything. I like the idea of like, oh, well, maybe these certain little aspects can come together to execute different kind of plans or anything. But at the end of the day, like, Luffy's place in this is going to be seeing all of these obstacles that are coming together through these world events. And he's going to be like, this is in the way of me getting to the place where the treasure is. And I need the treasure to go do the really dumb child thing that I want to do. So at that point, I'm going to make that everybody's problem. But like, there's not going to be a point in this like big final war that everybody, you know, is got their eyes on, where like Luffy rallies a bunch of pirate crews like some sort of war hero. That's not like, this isn't Naruto. That's not going to happen. So then we have to get there in some kind of roundabout way. You know what I mean?
Well, then let's play with that. What if we find out it ties into the Road of Poneglyph, the man marked by flames? We learn something about that character here, that would essentially put Luffy on that path of like, here's how you get to the One Piece. We need this. And it could be a whole list of things. But it could just be like, we need to wait here or something like that. Or
Okay.
you need to learn this, how to deal with this because the man marked by flames has the same powers as this Holy Knight that you couldn't do anything against. And Luffy's like, it's kind of like with Kaido. He had to learn a new move. He's like, well, how am I going to do that? Well, maybe this silhouetted character who could be whoever is like, I'll teach you how to do it. It's going to take, a few weeks or a month or whatever it is. And then that's when you have the Straw Hats doing their thing. I think, again, there's so many ways. There's so many, so many options. I would feel very, very at peace with some downtime. So, and I think we could work it out in a way that matches Luffy's characterization to your point. So we'll have to wait and see. I think that we could both be wrong. It could just be something not even close to either thing that's been suggested so far. I do want to end though on Ja Rule. He does end the chapter, and there was some chatter about this character. First of all, the sword through the head gag is great, but there was some chatter about this of like people being like, how come if he was alive during Nolan's age, right? So like we have characters on this island who theoretically, like judging by their lifespans, they know about Nika, so that kind of history has made it. But why is the Void Century so mysterious? And is that going to be something that is going to fill in some blanks for Robin as she reconvenes with Saul? Be in the sense that like there are things that the Giants can just tell us that, maybe they don't have the whole picture, but they could at least give us a sense of what was going on in the Void Century that also is going to help close the gap to eventually figuring out things like Lodestar and Laughtail. I want to know.
Yeah, it is interesting because basically, there's this sense that like Robin probably knows, has very clearly put together that all of these things do have to go together. Like figuring out the Void Century is going to tie directly into finding the One Piece because the poneglyphs themselves, of course, but also just Roger was chasing them. So there's that obvious giveaway all the way back at Skypiea that this was going to be that these things were all going to tie together. But we haven't like necessarily like pinned down the smoking gun in this timeline, right? We know because we saw the Roger flashback through Odin's journal, but like it would help to get these characters on the same page as us.
Right. How did Roger get this information? Maybe he got it from the Giants. Maybe the whole idea of like how to find this island, its existence, the poneglyphs, maybe the Giants are the ones who know about it because they're the only ones who have enough of a lifespan to kind of pass this stuff down accurately. So like, yeah, we could get some, and that could tie in Skoppergon pretty nicely, actually, in that sense, because that means that he had some real time here. He put down his roots. He got his residential permit or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I've flitted with the idea that Zebek is the one who tipped off Roger to that, but
yeah, it's fair.
We don't know for sure. We really don't. Like he did figure it out though. He got to Lodestar and figured it out, but it's not like Lodestar holds a bunch of information, right? That seems unlikely.
Yeah, we still don't totally understand its role anyway. But yeah, and then I have a feeling this is a roundabout way of getting to Ja Rule having the sword through the head, that's going to play into his memory acting up and not being able to tell the characters anything. So like,
that's
wait,
good.
Ja Rule, yeah, with Usopp being like, so you know about Nolan, you know about what happened. He's like, try to like adjust the sword, and then he remembers what he had for breakfast. Like he adjusts the sword again and he forgets his name, like that kind of thing.
Oh my goodness, that would be so fun.
It just feels like such an Oda thing to be like, here is the answer to the question, but I've also written a reason that you don't get it. That's just
right.
That's just how it'd be.
That is how it would be. It would be very funny though. I get a good laugh out of that.
Anything else, Trav, before we say goodbye and sail away? I like these Holy Knights. If they are Holy Knights, I mean, they seem dangerous.
I think I struggled a little bit with the Holy Knights first because it was really hard. I think you mentioned it already in the recap, but it's really hard to tell what that one knight does to that giant outside the throne room.
It feels kind of like the yokai powers, where it's something psychological, psychic, of like, that reminds me of the head exploding thing, but a different version of it.
That's what I thought, but then like even right now I'm looking at it, right? And
it looks like he has bandages on that he didn't have on before.
Like wrapping, but it's really hard to tell if the bandages themselves or if there's like some sort of connection. And again, like it's supposed to be like, oh, what's their powers? That's interesting. But we've gone a whole arc now with just not having that explained, like how much of this works. And it's like the mystery has got to at least be perceptible. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a rough choreography going on there. And I just, if you know what's going on, let us know in the comments, because I barely do.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of comments that were going beyond our speculation. I feel like most people, because I snuck a peek at like the comments on Reddit and what people have been talking about in various spaces, YouTube and all that. And it just seems like everybody's talking about Colin and, the whole like a giant and a human, in this day and age, Elbaf is not the same as when I was growing up. That kind of thing.
Woke.
So yeah, and I'll double check, but I do believe we have a break. Oh no, yeah, we do. So yeah, we're not getting another chapter for 2 weeks. So we'll have some free time here on Rookie Pirate Radio this January. I'm gonna be doing Sundance toward the end of the month though, so it's gonna be a little tricky how we're gonna be doing things. Travis, I will be landing in Salt Lake City, so thanks again for letting me stay with you the entire time, which I have not asked you to do, and I'm just joking about, obviously. But
well, I mean, you just said it. Now people are going to be like, do a live recording.
But yes, no, I'll be in Park City, of course, for the actual festival, but I will be passing through. And of course, as we have a couple of weeks, we do have time to do other things. There are a lot of other anime, sorry. There are a lot of anime, because we're not talking about anime right now, that have been hitting the stuff that maybe Travis and I could do a whole thing about. Dan to Dan comes to mind, because I finally have been ripping through that. And I know Apothecary Diaries, the new season's coming out. And while I was sick, I watched the entire first season of Apothecary Diaries. And as Allie Johnson predicted, I loved it unconditionally. So
yeah,
there you go.
On that note, I think it was just yesterday in a Discord message to me, Allie said, I got to quote it. She'll be mad if I slander her and not quote it correctly. Let's see. I got to get through all of my gushing about Kane Banache. Read that though. Oh yeah. The first candidate for a John anime has been watched. So the new season's bringing new things for you.
A Johname, as it were.
A Johname, yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to find out what it is. You know me. I'm open-minded. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for everybody who's been listening to the show. We'll be back hopefully soon. If you have your own requests, of course, of what you would like us to cover, don't hesitate. You can always email us at rookiepirateradio@gmail.com or hang out with us in Discord as usual. But we'll see you on the next voyage. For now, goodbye.